All right. Uh, Looks like we're live. Okay. Uh, I'm just gonna give this like a minute before I properly start because I'm by myself. I just wanna give some time for people to join. If no need to worry about anything, I'll be. I can wait. Just give it like 3 minutes and then we'll get started. Also, I need to refresh my dashboard for Twitch. Just need to make sure my stats are doing good. Make sure I'm properly online. There we go. Now we can officially say we're getting started. So, welcome to my stream. Welcome to the recording of my stream. Nobody's joined just yet, but I'll message people when they get online. It'll be just me for now. Uh, I don't have a proper setup for the toolbar and stuff because I'm still getting used to the everything. But we can't do it when we can't prepare for everything. I thought I would get guests, but I made the mistake of not actually inviting anybody. So it's just gonna be me tonight. It might be a short stream or recording if there's nobody to join me. But that won't stop me from talking tonight. By the way, what I think my friend Comics Division should also be streaming simultaneously with me, like tonight, as I'm recording this. So if nobody comes to show up for this, you're probably watching that. And did I say I need your views? I'm just kidding. Still, I'm glad somebody's watching a stream tonight, even if it's not mine. So let's get into the subject, even though nobody's here right now. For those who don't know, I am a comic book fan. That's been established over the last few streams. But most people don't think that I'm a comic strip fan. I actually do like the Sunday funnies. I've always been kind of a fan of reading them. They were basically my first proper introduction to comics, even if it isn't well, maybe not proper, but you know what I'm talking about. Uh, the panels with the pictures and the talkie balloons. That's basically how I came into contact with comics. I've always been a fan of some of the more mainstream stuff like Garfield, Dilbert, BC. Obviously Zits because I'm the target demographic they make fun of. Uh, I've been a fan of a lot of them. Yes, even Dagwood. You can judge me all you want, but I was a fan. Well, at least tolerated it, even though it's basically one joke over and over again. But I digress. But one that I've never really found myself getting into was a comic strip about Nancy. It's basically it's an older comic strip that's been around for a couple decades, like Garfield, but it's gone mostly under the radar. It's basically about this prim and proper little girl who has these who basically just deals with life as it comes to her. It's basically another slice of life comic strip. You can tell why I wasn't into it. I've read plenty of them. It's just what was one more. But there has been a little bit of a change going on when they changed artists and writers answers to a woman named Olivia James. Basically, ever since her run started, she's been kind of quote unquote modernizing the the comic strip. Basically, something that's more baffling to me is this one comic strip that basically plays out like a regular a regular Nancy comic, but here's the thing. Nancy and Sluggo were holding smartphones. Yeah, smartphones. I can't honestly believe it myself. It just I mean, with a lot of stuff that's been around for decades, you're bound to see some kind of modern innovation that hasn't been around since the comic book's founding somehow creep its way into the book. But Nancy James has been going full out millennial modern with it, and not in like the SJW kind of way with all the politics and junk. It's like, but it's got so many more modern stuff, like her teacher making a joke about how their spring break was, and Nancy saying, "I played video games and watched TV." That's honestly what she said. I'm. It still baffles me a little bit. Basically, what made my biggest complaint about when a lot of timeless things make a modern reference like out of nowhere, it makes it feel like a pulp culture reference rather than a reference grounded in the now. There's a difference between modern references and pop culture references. Is what I'm saying. Uh, it's easy to make the mistake of classifying one as another, especially when nowadays it's really hard to discern the two with how a lot of writing has been going on in a lot of media, not just comic books or movies. It's really hard, but I'll never say that it's a bad thing. However, what does get under my skin is basically everything around it. There is the there is the not controversy, but there is the aspect of Nancy James being one of the first women artists and writers on the comic strip for Nancy in in and I'm not kidding, 85 years. Man, and I get flack from my comic book fans for making me feel young. When there's a comic strip of a little girl doing day-to-day life things for 85 years. Now, I'm not going to bring up the the change itself, but rather the atmosphere around it. It's been driving the fan base in half. There are some who do like the changes, but I mean, it's bound to be inevitable when something's been around long enough for them to make modern references. I mean, trust me, I've watched Fairly Odd Parents since I was born. I was born the same year that show came out, just to give you retrospect. And when I started seeing modern references to like smartphones, selfies, and other stuff like that at in episodes of Fairly Odd Parents, I was a bit baffled to say the least. But I will never say that I was against it. Sometimes modernization can happen, but you gotta know how to use it responsibly in order to keep the tone that the original show that it was from Well, basically, it's to keep the tone of the show. If you do the wrong modern thing, you'll end up with a show like Yo Yogi, which is like one of the most dated 90s shows I've ever seen. Not kidding. There was a lot of 90s shows that were very, well, 90s, but none of them compared to Yo Yogi. I digress, though. I mean, kinda. I kinda digress because there is still a little bit of a thing to be said about dated versus is modern. What? Not to sound like I'm repeating myself. It's just, well, I don't really know. It's very difficult to, well, discern the differences between modern and pop culture if you don't know how to look for it. I mean, a movie like the Cat in the Hat live action movie, that is dated. Not lying for a single second. Oh, hold on a sec. Uh, okay, I'm good. Okay, I'm getting my mind's wandering. Basically, the real reason I'm bringing up this subject about Nancy and her fan base is because there's an article on avclub.com that kind of got under my skin with how cringy it was. I mean, cringy online news feed articles is nothing new, especially if you see my channel. When I've barely talked about out them before, been gone to random conversations with other people. I don't have that luxury tonight, so you're gonna have to deal with me rambling, stuttering, and stuff while I talk about the news article. So, without further ado, I would like to start reading that. And it's already off to a good start with the title. It's 2018, and people are suddenly screaming at each other about 85-year-old comic strip character Nancy. Written by William Hughes yesterday at 10:41 p.m. Big news in the typically moribund world. Moribund? Now that's a dictionary word. That's a thesaurus word right there. Here, maybe this person doesn't and have a bad article. The moribund world of the newspaper funny pages this week, as fans old and new descend into shockingly heated arguments about pseudonymous writer and artist Olivia James and her recent takeover of long-running comic strip Nancy. The news comes what? Nancy, the with a little girl and her hat wearing Pal Sluggo? No, she's not blonde. You're thinking of Luann. We're talking about Nancy right now. No, damn it, if we meant Funky Winkerbean, we would have said Funky Winkerbean. Fuck off with Funky Winkerbean for a second, okay? Jesus. I'm not kidding, that's actually from the article. If it wasn't for the fact that I am fat as hell, I would lean over and bang my head on the desk from how bad this article is. No, seriously. They say journalism is dead, and I can't argue against it when I have stuff like this to read. Okay, going back to reading this. Anyway, James, the first woman to ever work on the character, who was originally created by Ernie Bushmiller back in 1933, 85 years, oh my god. And her work have caught the eye of the internet reading public for a couple of reasons. First, it's actually funny, which is not something people go around saying very often about the octogenarian comic strips. The author of the article linked a tweet that showed a couple of examples rules of the comic strip in their full. So good job with with stealing content. But I digress. It does show it does go over the two comic strips I did mention earlier, as well as another one with with Nancy and Sluggo looking off model, where, and this is one of the laziest ones. Sluggo and Nancy look a bit off, and I'm not kidding. The 4 pages are basically saying, "Oh no, we don't look off. It's totally not that the artist is having an off day. It's just a Snapchat filter." And the fourth panel, I'm kid you not, is cartoonist note. Any questionable art from now on is because Nancy and Sluggo are using a Snapchat filter. Ugh, damn it. I love comic strips, but this is just pushing it. Okay. Pull myself together. Continuing with the article. But also, James has spent the last week adding things like smartphones and video games to the Nancy world, all of which are changes, and nothing riles up a comic page audience like the dreaded specter of change. No! That is not the problem. The problem isn't change. Changing the status quo is never a bad thing in itself. It's always good to see something refreshing done with characters. Hell, one of the biggest things that my friends and I from the Comicsgate community, I refuse to say that nowadays, even though we're just a bunch of comic book fans who are pro it. I mean, you can take that as you will. If you're against it, that's your opinion. I respect that, even though I disagree with it. But I digress once again. But my friends and I have said multiple times, not just amongst ourselves, but on streams, is that we are not against change. We're just against bad comics. We're more than happy when a character gets changed, as long as they're still written well. And this isn't. It really isn't. Okay, continuing. Thus, the first week of James's tenure on the strip has been its Go Comics comment pages. Oh my god, you're really reading the comments page? Oh my god. Erupt into flames, with the various verbal fighters more pissed off about the art changes on a Nancy comic strip than most of us get when someone drives over our mom. I'm sorry, this is really hard to read. This really is. I am literally reading this word for word right now, and it is one of the hardest things I have had to read. I have read 300-page storybooks with as I mentioned before, thesaurus level vocabulary in it. And this is one of the most difficult things I've had to read. I have majored in writing when I graduated from high school. To have somebody land a job writing this, it's just, it gets under my skin. I said this before, but it gets under my skin. The article does go on to quote anonymously, thank you for one of the complainers, saying, "You make me feel like dropping this comic strip because it ain't even close to funny," one writes, while another notes, I just cannot get into the new Nancy. Just not what I enjoy reading with my breakfast. Bye. I will unfollow this comic. Next one. Guy Silcrest. Where are you? A third demands beseeching the comic strip gods for the return of the comic's previous artist. This person is really trying to drive home the idea of making this person sound like a complete like these people sound like blasphemers. It's ridiculous. It just is. Uh, Continuing on. Fan of Jamie's changes are just as vocal. Meanwhile, causing the Nancy comment boards to be a hotbed of lively discussion and personal attacks. No, you weren't expecting to write that sentence in 2018 either. Oh! Oh! I know for a fact he was being sarcastic about that, but... this is emotionally draining. Still. Meanwhile, James is simply continuing to put out a pretty great gag a day comic strip every day, except Sundays, even if it does seem like she might have anticipated some of the negativity her changes have summed up. Here's the thing. If you expect negative backlashes to the changes you're making, it might be just a good idea that you should probably not do those changes. It's like asking if there's a problem with marrying a donkey. If you think there's going to be a problem with it, it probably is going to be a problem. I'm just getting baffled with this. I really am. Okay, continuing on. It does go. The article now plugs in more tweets. One from the Elementary Penguin replying to Mint Cake Time and Sparkle Tone. It's hilarious and also good fit for Nancy, which makes it work even better. It's basically the guy was replying to a tweet from Sparkle Tone mentioning the Snapchat filter comic I mentioned. Wait, it just stops here? The article stops here. I haven't read it through to the end until now, but this is the end? Are you kidding me? This is the kind of journalism we're having. Where a guy literally stops halfway through his article to publish it. I'm not even mad about the debacle about Nancy right now. This is the people we have controlling our informational output. This is unacceptable. It really is. I honestly feel sick right now. It's probably not for the fact that I ate shrimp before I started the stream. And I've been talking constantly for like the past half hour. Or 25 minutes, give or take. But still, the fact that I have to mention how bad this is. Ugh. I honestly don't think I could keep this up. Like, this actually had me emotionally drained from how cringy it was. I don't say cringe a lot, by the way. It's just this is one of the few times when I feel it. I I honestly can't for the life of me think of anything else to talk about. Mostly because I'm saving it for another stream that I plan on joining with Weaponized Nerd Rage and Comic Division on video game violence. We're still trying to hear back from Nerd about that. And if and Nerd, if you're watching this video or stream, uh, I'm still up for that, and I hope the stream turns out great. Still, getting back on the subject. I need a subject. So, let's talk about another thing that I've wanted to rant about basically since I watched it. The latest episode of Flash. For those who don't know, they introduced the Thinker into this season of Flash, who is an older, more obscure villain who hasn't gotten a lot of notoriety. He I honestly thought that this season they were going to introduce Godspeed, the Godspeed arc, with how the previous season ended, which was actually an okay way to end the season. It gave me the idea, and it just gave me the impression that the season was going to focus on an adaptation of the Godspeed arc from DC Comics, which, by the way, it was actually a really good mini series. I highly recommend it. For those who don't know, it would have focused on the Speed Force somehow leaking into the real world for a short moment in Coast City, which is where the Flash takes place. And it would have focused on a bunch of people getting Flash's super speed powers. And it becomes a city of speedsters, which in itself is a good idea. But then there's a rogue speedster out there who's killing these people and taking their speed force from them. And his name is Godspeed. He's the villain of the story. And I won't spoil who it was because they keep his identity kind of a mystery, but it was so good. Like, seriously, it's a good read. But instead, we did get the introduction of the Thinker, which isn't a bad thing. Getting a more obscure villain a chance to shine in the spotlight is never a bad thing. But this is kind of the same situation I had with Damien Dark in season 3 of Arrow. Or was it 4? I think it was 4. Yeah, it was 4. Season 4 of Arrow, where the character is supposed to be an intimidating, insurmountable obstacle for our characters. One who foils them in very seemingly impossible ways, only for them to find the way at the very end to fix it. Now, this is more of an issue with my sorry, I'm not scripted right now, but here's my thing. Here's the thing I wanted to talk about. Thinker is basically structured the same way as Damien Dark on a very surface level concept of their character arcs. They're very powerful from the get-go. They make the person seem impossible to defeat. Yet we're supposed to believe that they can be stopped somehow because our heroes are good. And that's all there is to it. And that's why I thought that season 4 of Arrow and this season of Flash are probably the weakest seasons we've had from both shows. Although Arrow season 5 with Prometheus is a dead close second, but that's more for how Prometheus is written after his secret identities reveal, which I guess is a spoiler in itself, but you know it was going to happen. They never keep identities safe in this show. But the point is, I guess to a lesser extent season 5 of Arrow counts with this too. These characters are supposed to be intimidating, but you don't give the characters a chance to have a win against these people when it comes to foiling their plans. It's like, oh, you want to beat me? Fuck you! And they pull out some kind of comeuppance in order to make themselves seem like the most badass villain. And I'm not against the idea of there being this thought process for these characters. I mean, you the villain this season is named the Thinker. You kind of have to have a thought process with them. But it's kind of like the same issue with that one character from the Clone Saga for Spider-Man. What was his name? He was like a magic user who was like really badly written. I'll think of his name later. I'll probably use it as a footnote in the comment and sort of like the description of the stream or video. Basically, what I was trying to say was that character, he was supposed to be this big bad supervillain who was supposed to have his evil plan revealed eventually, but it's not impossible, but it's so grand and epic. It's impossible for us mere mortals to comprehend what he's trying to do. And that's why he sucked. I mean, they were probably going to execute on the plan with him, but the writer who originally had a plan with him, he got dropped from the series a bit early, like before he could act on it. It probably would have turned out okay. Like, well, Spider-Man never has a magic character, and for him to have a powerful one to fight against would have been interesting in itself to see, but we never got to see it because he was basically wandering around saying, "I am smart, my plan is going to be great," and then he disappeared, never to be seen again. And unlike that character, the Thinker actually does have one. But we don't know what his plan is. My guess it's going to be like the previous season, where it's going to be something that's more petty and selfish and not as important. Even though the characters all go, "Oh, it is big because it affects us." I mean, this isn't like that one season of Hunter x Hunter with the character who was going to die. This is like the exact opposite of the seasonal shift from that series. There was this one character who was like supposed to be the world-killing big bad of that series, and he like literally had control over nukes. He was destroying the world, and that season was not very good. But then the next season, because of a lack of engagement and relationships with the characters, it's like a distilled drop in an ocean with stakes out there. But the stakes got personal on the next season when one of the older characters were on the verge of dying. Because there was more to relate to with the characters there. And that is supposed to be how it goes. You got to keep the story close to the character to make them feel personal. It's probably why the reception for season 5 was more well received compared to season 4 with Damien Dark, because the stakes were more personal to the characters. Even though it went on for like 5 episodes too long, again, it was an emotional drain to get through. Oh my god, I could rant about season 5 for hours. But I digress. I'm talking about Flash. Okay, and the current episode that just came out, when basically the premise is the Thinker ended up last season. Flash ended up in the Speed Force in order to plug that leak that I mentioned happened at the season finale of season 4. And basically this was a plan by the Thinker in order to get him to and Team Flash to open a portal to bring him back. And here's the thing. That resulting opening caused a blast of dark matter to basically give a bus full of like 12 people superpowers. And the Thinker basically wanted to go body jumping between all of them in order to absorb their powers one by one. And one of those characters, surprisingly enough, was Ralph Dibny, aka the Elongated Man. He basically since his introduction into the series, he was basically a temporary member of Team Flash, one who was being slowly trained in order to become a superhero alongside Flash, even though he was a gumshoe detective who was kind of crooked. I mean, his character progression was actually really good. I really liked how he was turning from that gumshoe who did the selfish things for selfless reasons. Because at the end of the day, his actions may have been selfish, but they were for selfless reasons. For example, the reason he was a gumshoe detective and not a cop, which he was originally in the series, he ended up planting evidence to convict a criminal who he knew for a fact was guilty of a murder, and got stripped of his badge because of it. He knew that was a very selfish and dick thing to do for planting evidence and basically going against the law. Even though his motivation and intentions were honestly good in nature. Hell, when he wanted to kill... Throughout the season, we always thought that he wanted to kill the Thinker because he wants to save his own skin. Which, of course, Barry does berate him for. And, of course, there are some other things, like the powers that were used by the metas. Like, some of the metas were goddamn annoying, and I'm glad that they did get their powers absorbed by the Thinker because it killed them in the process. Because I wouldn't have stand a whole season with some of these people. I honestly wouldn't. But they honestly, at no point when we fight again during Team Flash's efforts against the Thinker, do any of their victories feel gratifying, because you know somewhere around there Thinker's going to end up undoing that progress. And the plan all along was for them to intentionally capture these metas and to make them, well, be stored in one place so that he could capture all of them at once and just get them all in one sitting. He even let the he even knew about Ralph Dibny. He purposely let Barry train him, and spoiler alerts from here, he was the last person to get absorbed, so that his powers would be the dominant one. Because I guess his body was supposed to contain his ever expanding brain, even though that's clearly not what was happening. Still, and of course, a lot of people were like, if you guys keep up with the news related to these shows, you know the fan base for Flash is really divided about this. Some are saying, good riddance, Ralph Dibny was a superfluous character. And there are other people who are like, no, we've come to love this character. Why would you fucking kill him off? If you couldn't tell from my afflictions there, I'm obviously with the latter side here. Because for one thing, I was a fan of Ralph Dibny from the comics. I liked how he was a gumshoe detective. I liked how he was kind of like a watered down Plastic Man in some sense. But here's the thing. Ralph Dibny and his wife Susan from the comics are basically the equivalent of the Fantastic Four. They were the celebrity superhero family. Ones who've actually had a lot of interactions and among other things in the show. I knew for a fact they were going to do something like this. Make the plan for the Thinker Beast so that Ralph was the last guy so that he could be absorbed and become the bad guy. Even though his powers are basically useless to the Thinker, he just wanted to use them so that he could morph Ralph's body to match his original body before he ended up becoming the Thinker, because he was a meta too, except he was experimenting he was doing a haphazarded experiment to expand his brain during the events of season 1 when the dark matter reactor from the series. Don't worry, this is established in like episode 1. Basically, he had his smart thinking cap on when he tried to get his powers. But here's the thing. He wasn't just hit with the dark matter when that happened. He got struck by lightning. So for all we know, everything that's been happening to him could have been a side effect. But the point is, his body was degrading because his brain was basically requiring too much resource management and for the rest of his body to handle. Think like a computer that's been overclocked. It's more demanding on the other pieces of hardware to keep up with the faster processing speed, and if it can't reach those demands, the computer breaks. So we basically surmised the plan to start body hopping. But there's another thing. Now that this was basically the established plan, he wants to absorb all their power so he can become the most powerful meta. That's pretty much established from the get-go when he went through his plans. But here's the thing. We don't know what his plans are now. There's still more of the season to go through. I mean, hell, both the current season as we see it for both Flash and Arrow, this going on a side tangent here, they're both basically, how should I say this? They're both done. Well, they're close to done. They should be close to done. But chances are there's still like 5 episodes to go. This is like and you don't even have to be an anime fan to know this. This is like the destruction of Namek on Dragon Ball Z, where Frieza said there was like 5 minutes, even though it was like 12 episodes. This is kind of like that. There's there shouldn't be more to this, but they're clearly establishing there is. I mean, the I have more to rant about with Ralph dying, like lost potential for, or maybe after this season for Ralph Dibny to have his own spin-off series where he could do those. He could be a detective because let's be honest, Ralph Dibny was the best character in this season, and for him to get killed off like that was a big blow below the belt, at least in my eyes. Hell, I was talking about this with my parents on the way home from the hospital to check on my uncle. He got afflicted with with the flu outbreak that's been going on around my state. Eh, it was a mess. But basically, me and my father were just having like a big discussion about the CW shows and our thoughts on it. And one of the things I mentioned was his thinkers. The show is trying to do everything in its power to make it seem like an edgy, smart show, even though it is just edgy. And Ralph was like one of the few things that was making it so that it didn't feel as formulaic as it was for the other 4 seasons. And I said to him, the season is going to be ruined for me if Thinker's plan actually works and and Ralph gets absorbed. And he did. And I still stand by that statement. I do think this season is going to end up not feeling as engaging from this point on for the rest of it, because we wasted a character arc on a character that wasn't going to appear anymore. This would have been okay if it was a character arc for a villain that was probably that they were establishing wouldn't die. I mean, that might get killed in the end. Like a redemption arc where they sacrifice themselves. It's cheesy and done to death, but it still works on a basic level. But with a hero arc, it's tragic. It should feel earned for that to happen. Because we're supposed to relate and engage with these characters. If you want their deaths to be meaningful, you have to earn the right for them to die. And this just doesn't feel like it. It just feels like another stepping stone in Thinker's plans. And it freaking pisses me off. It genuinely does. I 100% honestly feel like the rest of the season is going to be not as good because Ralph is not going to be there. For all I know, they might end up listening to the backlash and going, we'll figure out a way to bring Ralph back. I mean, they might do something like they'll probably undo Thinker's brain patterns and rewrite them to match Ralph's. They'll probably do something. Hell, they might do something like in Exiles with Morph and a certain evil character, and make it so that they're bipolar personalities, and that Thinker's personality gets suppressed, so that Ralph's is the dominant. I honestly don't know. But I will tell you this. I'm not looking forward to the rest of the season. I genuinely am not. I just hope that one day we'll be able to have a good moment with Flash where we don't have to go, damn it, Barry. Because this is Barry's fault. He was the one who motivated. This season would have been over in this episode had Ralph gone through with killing DeVoe. That's the last name of the thinker. And he could have. They actually did have a genius moment. No pun intended. Uh, Henry Styles, the one of the professors from the season, ended up inventing a tuning rod that matches one of the metas, like the sound waves of one of the metas that got absorbed by DeVoe. That was like one of the only people who could harm him. And he accomplished this by making a thinking cap that was basically like a bootleg to DeVoe's thinking cap that he made when he originally became the thinker. And one of the things that they planned on doing with it, because the final meta was also found in this episode, and Barry was like, "Don't fucking kill him. Don't fucking kill DeVoe. We are not going to be monsters." Even though he had a good reason to. Even though Ralph had a good reason to. It wasn't because he was afraid of what DeVoe would do to him. He was afraid of what DeVoe was going to do to Team Flash, because Ralph put it perfectly. DeVoe wants nothing in his way, but Team Flash is always going to be in his way, and Ralph doesn't want that. He doesn't want them to be in his line of fire when it's his battle to fight. And Barry, I swear, had one of the most ultimate damn it Barry moments by saying, "But if you do that, we're gonna lose our Ralph. Don't take him from us. He's gonna be there. This is just gonna be one kill. Everybody and I hate that I'm gonna have to reference this, but near the end of the Deadpool movie, Colossus, when Deadpool has the villain's got head right up to his guns, he's ready to kill him. Colossus just goes into this grandiose speech where it's like, no, because they built up that heroes always have to have the moment where they have to make the bad calls. And Colossus is like, "No. We only have like 3 or 4 of those moments in our lives when we have to make the tough calls to be heroes." Ralph could have easily made this one harsh decision. And I do think this is one of the biggest things that brings Flash down. Barry himself. Barry's savior complex is one of his biggest hubrises in some of the worst ways possible. Seriously, his selfless moments in this season were some of the most grating fuck you to the audience moments we could have had in the series. Anytime Barry could have had a leg up on DeVoe, he found the ways immoral and props to the guy for trying to keep his integrity in check. But when you're dealing with a guy who might have a literal god complex, capable of doing some of the most unspeakable things to humanity, you've got to make a very bad call in order to put him down before he's able to mess with the people you love. And it genuinely, for those who hasn't seen this series yet, you're going to see, you probably already know about the damn it Barry moments, where when Barry makes one of those decisions where you go, "Damn it Barry." This season is full of them. Hands down. You could say the Flashpoint arc from season 3 would be one of the biggest, like seasons 3 or 4. I think it was season 4 with the Flashpoint arc. You could say that's one of the ultimate damn it Barry moments. I honestly think that every single damn it Barry moment from this season has more or is higher on the amount of damn it you could put in a damn it Barry list. Like these, if they were in the top 10, everyone, they would mostly consist of all the top ones would consist of all the damn it Barry moments from this season, and the Flashpoint one would be after that. That's how asinine these decisions are. I genuinely think that Barry is too good for his own good. That may sound redundant, and that's because it is. But that's how annoying I find this. Barry tries his best to be able to see the good in people. He thinks that there's always another way. But every time I see him try to put this other way in other people, it's always somebody else who kills the villain. The villains always die in some way. Even though, and you don't hear hear him going, "Oh, I couldn't save them." For all his talk of being a savior, he does a shit job saving the villains. This is one of the biggest problems I have with him. He wants to go out of his way saying we shouldn't kill him. When, and I'm sorry for saying this, but a member of Team Flash ends up killing the villain in season 4. Because you know he's going to die by the end of this if you know who it is. You know he has to. It's been like this for almost every season. Barry is the biggest hypocrite in this show. Not just for the Flashpoint incident, but for everything else. It's just, it's starting to get to me. I know some of my friends love this, Angleton especially, but it's just, it's getting on me, okay? I genuinely do think that there is some good in this that could be in this show that could be salvaged, along with the other CW shows. Even Black Lightning, as god awful as the season finale was, despite the action scenes being okay. All these shows have wasted potential. Like, they could be their own shows. Hell, if they stuck with their guns about Arrow being a grounded crime drama, it could have been a lot better. Not that the additions of comic book things weren't bad. Hell, I actually liked some of the arcs that resulted from it. Like season 3, that season is fantastic. It is a definite leg up compared to the other seasons. But you have to know when to let sleeping dogs lie. It's just, I know I should be listening to that, but I'm just getting emotionally drained from this. Hopefully the rest of the season and for Flash could be better than this. The aftermath of this episode. Hopefully they can find a way to salvage it. But I doubt it. Well, I guess I wasted a solid hour of everyone's time. I am listening to me rant about Flash. But at least I could probably do like a whole series where I could, or like another show where I could probably talk about more CW related stuff with maybe some other friends who probably watch the shows. I mean, I think I'm like the only one who, out of any of my friends who's watched it every episode through the end, except maybe Anglitine. Maybe Anglitine's caught up with the show. I don't know, but hopefully, hopefully we'll find a better subject for next week. I'm gonna call it for the night. Uh, I know nobody showed up this time, and that's understandable. We had no guest stars, and I honestly don't have much of a fan base. But hopefully, if you watch this through to the end, you got came out of this talking, thinking about something new. Hopefully, this whole endeavor wasn't wasted. So with that said, I would like to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on my next streams. I stream every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which would be like 7:30 for West Coast, per like Pacific Standard Time. And and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the stream and join me next time.